Welcome to I Love This Thing So Fricking Much, a podcast about passion. My name is Sophie Katz, and today I am joined by Dr. Ardisia Knowles, an educator. Welcome back to the show, Dr. Knowles.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
I'm happy to have you here. So, here's how this works. Dr. Knowles will have 3 minutes to talk about something that she loves. This can be a person, place, thing, concept, activity, anything she wants. Our only requirement is that she loves it wholeheartedly and wants to tell us why. Are you ready, Dr. Knowles?
Yes.
Good. Got my timer here. Now, what do you love so fricking much?
Today, I'm going to be talking about the musical Hamilton. In general, I love musicals. I'm a super huge musical theater nerd, and I specifically love Hamilton so much because of how complex it is. And it's very layered. If you don't know, Hamilton is basically just about Alexander Hamilton, who is one of the founding fathers, and the musical focuses on his perspective of the birth of America. And the music is amazing. It's written by Lin-Manuel Miranda, and he's an amazing lyricist. And he comes from a hip hop background. So a lot of the songs in the musical are hip hop and R&B influenced, which is kind of what drew me into it. It's very different than the traditional musical, and I really like that about it. So there's a lot of rapping and there's a lot of soul, a lot of R&B, and he does a really good job of bringing hip hop to Broadway and giving different people an opportunity to let their talent shine in a space where they might otherwise not feel comfortable. And so that's like one of the things I love about it. I mentioned he's an amazing lyricist, and I have this book about the making of Hamilton and just some of the ways that he chose to write some of the songs and develop some of the characters. And there's so many little hip hop references that show up here and there, and so many little Easter eggs and things that connect to actual history. That's another thing that I really like what he did. Like, it's not just that he made this hip hop musical, but he's also pretty historically accurate for the most part. And that's really cool too. I lost my train of thought, but basically, those are some of the key things that I really like about it. The music is great. Oh, that's what I was going to say. I also absolutely love that all of the characters, that are in the musical, historically, they're white, but they're played by people of color.
Go ahead and finish your thought.
And I love that so much because it makes a statement.
That's wonderful. Thank you for telling us about Hamilton today.
No problem.
So, how did you first get interested in this musical?
So I was in Boston at the time and I was working on my master's, and it was probably social media. And then I downloaded the cast recording and I just listened to it. And then I was like, oh, this is good. And then I listened to it again. And then I kept listening to it. And then I was doing research about it and learning more about it. Because the other half of this too is that I'm also a low-key history buff.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really the other thing that drew me to it. So yeah, just like hearing about it on social media and then kind of just diving into it from there. And eventually I did make my way to see it in New York. And then I saw it again in San Diego through work. When it first came out and was getting popular, there was this like Hamilton program that schools could pay to have as a part of the curriculum. And my school was chosen to be one of the schools to participate in it when they were in San Diego. And so I was able to teach to my students using Hamilton, which was super cool. And then we saw the musical, and then I saw it a third time with a friend. But yeah, that's pretty much how it started. It was social media, and then it just kind of avalanched from there.
So, what was it like to finally see this show in person for the first time after, no doubt, hearing the soundtrack so much and seeing everyone's posts about it?
Yeah, I cried a little bit. It was just so cool. It was like everything that I imagined, but more. When it comes to musicals, you have the opportunity to listen to the songs before you have the chance to see it live. And, you can kind of imagine what's happening on stage, but once you really actually see it, those songs come to life. And then listening to it again after the fact changes the experience.
So, as an educator, tell me what was it like to teach using Hamilton?
It was fun. It was kind of like a co-curricular. It was obviously a history lesson and a little bit of English. And so the students, we were focusing on the song Firmer Refuted. We basically dissected that song and broke it down and drew out some of the historical things that were mentioned in the song. But then we also talked about the structure of the song itself. And that's kind of where the English piece came in because, it's a little bit of poetry at that point. You're just dissecting and analyzing a poem. And then they got to create their own performance based on a moment from that whole time period, like the American Revolution. And the field trip that we took where they got to go see the musical performed before the show, there were some groups who had gotten chosen by the program to actually perform their piece on the stage in the Civic Center in San Diego, California, before the actual performance started. Unfortunately, none of the students in my program at the time got chosen, but just seeing the other kids do their thing on a big stage like that was really cool. And the theater was just full of high school students, which is also what I loved because they got to experience something like that, which, with a group of kids like that, who's to say if they ever would really have a chance to see a musical of that caliber for free?
It sounds amazing on multiple levels, in a similar way to how Hamilton itself is a combination of a lot of different things, a lot of what people would think of as very different interests. Like you can imagine someone who's interested in history, but not Broadway musicals or not hip hop and R&B, but someone who would be interested in hip hop and R&B, but not history and not Broadway musicals or any other combination of interest and not interest. And this becomes a combination of all of this with so many entry points for different people. And then they reached out to students. They reached out to people and said, hey, here's a way to learn. Here's a way to be creative. And then this program, as you described it, gives them more opportunities to be creative on their own and get interested in history on their own.
Yeah, it just like opens up avenues for them to gain new interests.
Talk a little more about the hip hop and R&B influence in this musical.
Yeah, so Lin-Manuel Miranda grew up in New York. I don't want to say the suburb because I could be wrong. Something is telling me Washington Heights, but that's probably incorrect. But being from, that area, when you're talking about hip hop, a lot of people reference New York artists and New York in general because hip hop started in New York, more or less, in the US. So Lin-Manuel, being from that area, was influenced by hip hop just in general in his life. And so incorporating it in the musical was really neat. And it shows up in references to Biggie and Tupac, Ja Rule, Ashanti, and just like these little Easter eggs that people who are familiar with hip hop or like who are hip hop heads would pick up on. And it's just like you mentioned, right? It's like these little avenues that draw in different types of people and bring them to the same place. And I think that's beautiful.
Especially since there is, if I'm assuming things haven't changed from when I was in school, there is a big emphasis in the American education system. We want people to be interested in our history, especially, where it all began in our cultural mythology of the Revolutionary War. And it can feel very dry and far away and has nothing to do with today. And Hamilton sounds like it really made an effort to make it seem like something that does connect to today and can be spoken about and celebrated in the way that we deal with things in our culture today.
And it's been so long since this musical came out, and we're so far removed from when it swept at the Tonys and all of that hype, but I still feel like so passionate about it because it's so good.
Is there anything that you don't like about the musical Hamilton? And if so, how do you handle that?
I want to say no.
Which is a valid answer.
Yeah, which I'm sitting here thinking about it. And truly, like, if there's something about it that I dislike, it's a piece of the story, which is tricky because it's historical, right? So, in the context of the musical, I think Alexander Hamilton and Angelica Schuyler would have been an amazing couple.
Mm-hmm.
But, history shows us that he was with Eliza, and him and Angelica like supposedly had this like little thing on the side, but it was just through letters. And so, yeah, I think the romantic in my mind is like, oh, they would have been so amazing together, but that's not what actually happened. So I guess that's something I don't like, but it is what it is.
And it's totally fair to look both in fiction and in history and in fictionalized history and think, what if it would be nice maybe if history went a little different, if this character ended up with that character. Especially when we're several hundred years away and we're not actually hurting anyone's feelings when we think about it.
Yeah, it's true.
Dr. Knowles, thank you so much for telling us about something you love today.
Thank you. I enjoyed it. I love this musical so much.
And thank you, our listeners, for tuning in today. If you have something you love so freaking much you want to tell me all about it, consider this your invitation to join the show. I Love This Thing So Freaking Much is a production of Through the Window Media. This episode was directed and edited by Sophie A. Katz. You can find us at Through the Window on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or Tumblr. That is THROU the Window at all those social media sites. Be good to yourself, be kind to each other, and you'll hear from us again soon.